Hi, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. Glad and delighted on this episode to be talking with author Lorien Lawrence. Lorien, thank you for jumping in, joining, and talking with me on what is here a kind of snowy Sunday morning. Kind of
Yeah, it
snowy.
sure is. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I can't think of anything I'd rather do than talk about books and writing on a snowy Sunday morning. My husband's
Wonderful.
out there shoveling now, so this is also a nice excuse for me to get out of that.
Nice, nice. Glad to provide that for you. I'll mention, of course, the series is Fright Watch that
Yes,
I know you for, and that would be the Stitchers, the Collectors, and Unmasked would be the three entries so far. Did I get that right?
you got that absolutely right. Yep.
All right. And I also know that in between writing frightening stories, you also teach children.
I do.
Yeah.
I am a seventh grade English teacher in Connecticut. And so it's middle school all the time. It's writing about middle schoolers, teaching middle schoolers. My own children are not in middle school yet, but we're only a couple years away. And that's when
Mm.
I might end up having to switch to adult because of adult writing. That might be just like too much middle school for one person.
24/7,
Yeah.
24/7.
And
And you
who
are in the
wants
middle of middle school.
I am in the middle of middle school. Absolutely. Yeah. They're crawling out of their skin, but they're fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I taught eighth grade for 8 years, and as I mentioned before I hit the record button, I've since done other things and taught some older kids, but there's just nothing like the middle school audience for sure.
Yeah, they're something. You never know what you're gonna get, and that's why I like it.
Yeah. I have an English teacher question to start out with, which is how did you connect with storytelling in the written word? Like, when did it become the thing that you knew you wanted to explore?
Literally forever since kindergarten.
Mm,
When my kindergarten teacher, Miss Shapani, she had stations like all around her room, as a lot of I feel like kindergarten teachers at least did in the 80s. And so there was two stations when she was showing us her room. There was one, it was like a giant cardboard cat that she had made that was like a little reading nook that you can
mhm,
go in and
mhm,
there was pillows and stuffed animals and things. And then there was a just a desk but with a giant pencil that she had made out of cardboard. And that was like the writing station. And the thing that I loved about that teacher that I feel like wasn't the norm in the 80s, at least in my experience, was that she was like really, really into imagination and just like letting us like go sit and write a story. And it
mhm.
didn't matter that we didn't really know how to write yet or spell or read or any of those things that you kind of need to write a story. She was just like, and then she would have us tell the story to her. And she would, obviously putting it on a bit thick, but enraptured with whatever it is that, our little 5-year-old minds were
Mhm.
coming up with. And that was like the first time I kind of realized, okay, like it's exciting to tell stories to people. This is really fun. Like she's having a reaction. As an adult, I know it was exaggerated, but at the time it felt very real. And that kind of sparked my love of writing. And that same year, again, it was the 80s. I'm sorry, you hear my daughter singing in the background. I told her not
I
to sing, but
I
she has a
actually
song in
don't.
her heart.
I actually don't hear her,
Oh,
but
good.
yeah.
Okay. It's Frozen. Okay,
Great,
so
great. Yeah.
she's a theater kid. But that same year in kindergarten, uh we had, I can't remember his name, which is really bad of me, but we had a librarian, like full on sweater vest library in the basement before they renovated it, and he
Mhm.
always did story time and he was really enthusiastic. And it was around Halloween, and he had us all carpet time sit in a circle, and he read to us from scary stories to tell in the dark, bunch of 5-year-olds, and we were just frozen in fear, but it was also the most amazing thing that had ever happened to any of us. And we couldn't stop talking about it for like forever. And so that was kind of like, all right, there's this writing piece where I can tell my own stories and get this kind of electric feeling. And there's this reading thing where I can read these like, spooky, scary things, but you get the same feeling. So I feel like kindergarten was like super pivotal. And I just think I lucked out with those two teachers who really encourage you to just like read and write whatever you want.
Mhm.
They weren't snobs about it like some teachers I had later. you're a teacher. I feel like we've all met people like that are just like no genre fiction for you, and
Hmm. Hmm.
it was really really important, I think, to like who I ended up becoming.
Yeah, yeah. Only the classics. Only the
Yeah.
1800s literature,
Oh,
please.
you
Yeah.
must really get that as a high school teacher as well, or whenever
Yeah,
you were in high
yeah.
school.
Yeah, I get to play that balance for sure.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do your students know that you are a famous writer,
Ah,
Amazon findable person?
um, I mean, I wish I was a famous writer, but they know I'm a writer. They know I have books. They're very cute about it. The sixth grade teachers in my building are very sweet, and they have my books on the shelves. The librarian has my books, and
Nice.
they definitely like book talk them. So by the time they get to me in seventh grade, they kind of already know. But I do use a pen name, so sometimes my teacher name and my pen name throws them a little bit, and then
Ah,
somewhere along the line, if I we do a creative writing unit, and that's kind of the only time I will talk about my other life, if you will,
hmm.
because I don't want to be weird about it or anything.
Right.
But they'll be like, "Wait, that's you? I read that book. I liked that book. Mrs. So and so gave me that book," and they like don't put the two things together. But that also feels very middle school. Like, have you ever seen a student in the wild, like in the grocery store, and they're just
Oh,
like
yes.
mortified at the sight of you that you're a real person who grocery shops? It's like kind of like that, oh, you do this other thing. You're not just a teacher all the time. It's quite funny.
It's like spotting a centaur. It's like,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
He's buying cheese. Like it's like the littlest things fascinate them.
Yes, true, true. So does being in the classroom, is that part of what has inspired you to write for young people, or are there some other parts of that inspiration?
I think now it does. I fell into it. I did like very traditional when I was a kid, and again, I had like really nurturing teachers and parents who didn't care what I wrote. They were just excited I was writing and reading on my own and gobbling up books. So I'm like, but then I hit a point, I think the older I got, and especially when I got to high school, when it very much was like what we were mentioning earlier of like, nope, you need to read, like, you only read the classics in school and you
Hmm.
need to read important books at home. And I took creative writing all 4 years as my elective in high school, and it was always very much no, you're going to write like literary fiction. And then I
Hmm.
got to college and I majored in English, and I love my professors. I still talk to some of them, but it was this more of the same. It was no, you're going to write literary fiction and you're going to read literary fiction. And I do
Hmm.
love literary fiction. I don't get me wrong, I do. But then I went to grad school and it was more of the same. So there's just like a pattern with that where it's like, genre fiction is just not academic enough, or I don't know. There's a stigma against it that's hopefully going away. I don't know. But I was trying to write literary fiction, adult novels
Hmm.
for a while, and then I was querying like forever, like novel after novel, just rejection after rejection. And it was really difficult to get those rejections because I wasn't having that much fun. And then I lost like full adult, lost my dad. And
Hmm.
I had just moved back to the town I grew up in. So after college, I moved to England for a couple of years. And then me and my now husband had moved, he's from England. We had moved back to my childhood neighborhood essentially, and got our first house. And so I was kind of back in this nostalgic place, and I had just lost my dad, and there was like a lot of stuff going on where I was just like, I kind of just want to like tap into those really warm and fuzzy feelings I had as a kid when I was
Hmm.
hanging out with friends in this park and walking my dog over there and like going to that ice cream place and eating pizza from this place, like, and that's kind of where the Stitchers came out of. It was just like, I just want to write something for fun. And
Hmm.
I always say, I don't think it's a coincidence that that's the first book I ever sold.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't sell it right away. I don't know how many of your listeners are writers. But I did not get an agent with that book, and I did not sell it right away. I wrote the draft in 2012, and I was sending it out to agents, and the market was really different. There wasn't a lot of like kid horror like there was when I was a kid. There was R.L. Stine and Christopher Pike and L.J. Smith, and like it was like the pulpy, it was everywhere. And then it
Hmm.
went away, and it was a lot of like sad books, literary, even literary for kids and all of that. And
Yeah.
that's just kind of not where I was at. And I couldn't get my students to read those kinds of books, to be honest. Like at first, I worked in an inner city. It's a different district than I'm in now, but it was like, reading levels were kind of low. It was a struggle to get kids excited about reading. I could get them excited about spooky books, scary books. My most reluctant readers, I could hook them with that.
Yeah.
So that's I just kind of fell into it. And it took I wrote it in 2012 and it came out in 2020. So I wrote a bunch of different things in between, but that was the book where I feel like I kind of finally found my voice, even though I had been writing since I was 5. It took a long time. And I think I had to let go of some of my what word do I snobbery? I don't know. That was kind of drilled into me like this is genre fiction,
Yeah.
which is just stupid because some of the most important works of literature like are from genre. Like and I just feel like there's still that stigma over it, but it is what it is.
Oh yeah, yeah. The stories that I hear about most from my students, even at the high school level, are like, "Have you read The Lottery?"
Hmm.
Telltale
Yeah.
Heart, things like that, um, that work and that are part of genres. So,
Yeah.
and I was thinking about that R.L. Stein period and just how fun it is sometimes to be just scared enough as a young reader.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I love what you said there also about hooking readers because that's a big part of what we try to do every single day.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter what you read as long as you're reading, because especially language arts and English, it's so skill based. It's like it's not I don't need to teach you how to read this one book, but I need to teach you how to do, X, Y. I need to teach you how a character goes on a journey and how to find the conflict and, some possible themes and and how to explain points and find evidence. But you can do that with literally any piece of text. So I do like how education is moving more towards choice and letting kids. And I know some teachers like fight and push against that because it's impossible for us to read every book to know if a kid's really reading. But it's kind of like having those conversations. I'm hoping we get them to like reading more because I feel like there was a little period there where it was pretty dismal. And I'm sure there's still school districts that are really struggling to get their kids to love to read. But then, some of the books we just hand to them, it's like, yeah, no wonder they're not excited about reading. And then we fall into the rut because of budgets where no, you're allowed to order like a book that's going to be your whole class text, but you're going to have that book for like 10 years because we have copies of that. And it's like the world changes. I mean, and we change and the kids change, and you're still reading that same one book. So I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, agreed, agreed. When it comes to the work you do in creating scary stories for younger readers, um, any particular craft moves, any particular approaches that you take?
I'm I think it's because I'm an English teacher. I'm a planner.
Yeah,
I love an organizer.
yeah.
Um, and I have a lot of author friends who aren't, who just are like, I feel stifled by that. But because I have like a full-time day job and I have 2 small kids at home, like I have to know where I'm going so
Hmm.
that I can, every minute I have that I can spend writing, I'm pretty much just like, oh, that's the next chapter. Okay, I'm gonna do that. I can do like a bit of that today. So I'm really huge on outlines. In that way, like I don't know why I randomly picked the number 10, but I always plan for 10 chapters in any book I write. They never end up as 10, but it's like a starting place. One of my best friends uses the 7 point system where she has the 7 points of a plot arc essentially, and she fills those in. Which I've done that as well. But I think when you write something scary and you want it to have a happy ending, because I think that is like the big important thing about middle grade horror is that you do end in hope. Adult horror doesn't have to, even young adult horror. But when you're writing for kids, you can scare them as long as you bring them back and let them know that, like, because of this kid's own bravery, they're going to be safe.
Hmm.
So I kind of have to know what that's going to be. And especially because Fright Watch is a series, my next book coming out is not part of the series, it's a standalone, but I still had to plan that out just as much and kind of know if this were to turn into something more, where would I take these characters? I kind of always like to think of them a couple of years in advance of like, or into the future of like, where would they end up because of this? So I think outlining is the biggest thing I do. It lets me write faster as well. Because I know where I'm going. And do I change things all the time? But it also makes me less anxious. Like I usually, knock on wood, I don't usually ever get writer's block. It's usually the opposite. I get too many ideas and I have to like have people help me prioritize, like Lorien, do this one now.
Yeah,
And I really do think it's because I outline.
love
Yeah.
it. Love it. You have anticipated my next and final question, and that is things that currently have your creative attention and where people can go to learn more. It's a two-parter. So you mentioned you have a standalone that
Mhm.
is in development and on the way.
It is in copy edits right now, and they're going to start looking at covers. And I usually always share like cover sketches and things. So you can find me on Instagram at Lorien Lawrence. That's where I'm the most active. I have a Facebook, I have a X, I have Threads, I have Blue Sky, but I really only use. I only have enough time for one, so I'm pretty active on Instagram. But that book is called The Many Hauntings of the Manning Family. And because I'm from Connecticut, where I live literally a mile away from where the Warrens lived, Ed and Lorraine Warren, Connecticut people, we are nerds for like the Warrens and the paranormal and all of that.
Yeah.
And it is in like inspired by that type of family. So it's these two famous ghost hunting legends who pass away, but they like leave this legacy to their grandkids who are twin mediums, and their mom doesn't have the gift, and it skipped her generation, so she's kind of like peak stage mom. And one of the twins doesn't want to do it anymore; she just wants to play soccer, and the other twin just wants to make his mom happy. And so it's kind of like what happens when you have this family burden. So they convince the twin who doesn't want to do it anymore to have this one last haunt, and obviously it can't just go as planned. So that is gonna be a cool one. That one's a fun one. It has found media in it, so like all the stuff that the kids find along the way, like there's visuals in the book, which I'm
Oh,
super
nice.
excited to see how they do that because I've never had anything like that. So that comes out in March 2025. So a little ways away. But yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Oh, well, glad to hear that the creating is continuing and amazing work. I'm sure you're doing amazing work in the classroom as well. And always glad to talk with an author and teacher combo. It's a nice combination. So anything that we've missed that you want to make sure to share before we close out?
I don't think so. I always respond to people if they write me through my website, which is just Lorien Lawrence. I do read those and respond. And yeah, I hope all you teachers out there are having a nice start back into the classroom. I know I was super tired all week going back, but
Yes, and my students were too.
yeah,
Absolutely. But we made it. We
we
made
made
it. That's right.
it.
All right. Well, thank you again and glad to talk anytime.
Thank you.